Hello, this interview is one in a series of interviews that Special Collections section of the State Archives of North Carolina is conducting with the American Indian Heritage Commission to record the lived experience of indigenous communities in North Carolina. These oral histories will be part of an archive series and will be made available to the public. Today is Monday, July 24th, 2023. It is 1:30 p.m. and this is an interview with, if you could give us your full name, please.
Dorothy Stewart Yates.
And can you spell that for me?
Dorothy Stewart Yates.
Excellent. Thank you. This interview is being conducted for the American Indian Heritage Commission Oral History Project. The interviewer is John Horan. I have with me
Curry Bird, Director, North Carolina American Indian Heritage Commission, KERRYBIRD.
I've also got Courtney Hamlin with us. Forgot to mention that in the last interview, but here we go. This video interview is being conducted in person here at the Sappony Tribal Center in Halifax County, Virginia. And we'll start with a rather easy question, I think. Where and when were you born?
I was born right here in the High Plains community in 1955. The birth actually took place in Person Memorial Hospital in Roxborough, North Carolina. But I have lived in the High Plains community down the same driveway all of my life. My childhood home is near the end of the road, and then when I returned home, my dad gave us land to put our homes on. So down the road is three of my brothers and me, my parents, and at the end my grandmother. So we have a total family road.
Right. That's great. I like the continuity of it all. It's nice. But yeah, you started telling us about yourself, but why don't you tell us more about yourself?
I was the middle child of 5, and I had an older brother, an older sister, then it was me, and then I have younger brothers that are twins. And we lived on a farm. My dad farmed and worked a public job. So my mom was the caretaker of the children of the family garden and carried out the duties that my dad left for us during the day to do on the farm. So she was the organizer and the raiser, basically, of us. But we knew our dad had a hand in it too, because my dad did not give second warnings, and he expected the best. And I find my parenting style was taken a lot after him, a lot with the love and compassion that my mother shared. So we grew up on the farm, and I was fortunate enough to be able to go to the High Plains Indian School for the first grade. And we lived close enough proximity that we walked to school. So we would get up in the morning, walk to school, every kind of weather, and then after school we would walk back home. And we helped with my uncle's farm that was in Virginia. And my brother, being the oldest, he would drive the tractor, and we would be in the trailer. And he would take us on the path back through the woods over to Uncle Stover's and Aunt Grace's house to work in tobacco after school. And we would go there and work in the tobacco after school until whatever task was being done was done, and then come home. We had our chores to do, and then our homework. My mom always made sure homework was done, and she worked with us on whatever we needed to know. At High Plains School, we had to memorize Bible verses, And so we were given the Bible verse on Monday, and then we had to recite it on Friday. So my mom made sure that we knew our Bible verse. So we may be repeating it at the supper table or in the tobacco field or after school or whatever. And in the High Plains School, it was a grades 1 through 12, that only our American Indian students here in the community attended. The students that lived in Virginia went to the school even though it was in North Carolina. And the Virginia Board of Education paid tuition or helped pay the teachers or gave some kind of financial support to the High Plains School for those students, Indian students in Virginia, to attend in North Carolina also. So I was fortunate to go there for the first grade. And then afterwards, they closed the school. And they divided us up into the 2 white schools that were the closest ones in the area, one being Bethel Hill and one being Allensville. And Bethel Hill was also a high school. At Allensville, it was just grades 1 through 8. So my family was chosen to go to the Allensville school. And so we attended Allensville. I attended beginning in the 2nd grade. And that was before integration. Integration didn't happen until I was in the 6th grade. But the county had closed the school because we did not have an inside cafeteria. And North Carolina had made a ruling that all students had to have the opportunity of having a hot lunch. And we didn't have a cafeteria. And because it was what they considered a low enrollment school, they decided to send our American Indian students, divide us up into the 2 white schools instead of doing the necessary additions for cafeteria and other additions that had to happen there. My mom happened to be the president of the PTA during that year. So there were several families that spoke to the board members and to the PTA members. And some of our Indian parents agreed that it would probably be better for us to attend the white schools for more opportunities, whatever. My mom was not a believer of that, but sadly to say, she did not get her wish along with some of the other Indian parents. We had been a very seclusive community in that we all went to church together. We all went to High Plains together. We were, a lot of us, interrelated. All of our families lived here, our cousins, and so for playtime, it had been, or visitation, it was right here within our High Plains community. So this was the first time that I had been given an opportunity to be placed with children from the white race and to be taught, by the white teachers, to go to the white school. And so it was an adjustment time there. And I have a story to tell on that. My sister was always the quiet one of the group. I was always the outspoken one. And she and I were very close. She was 1 grade ahead of me. And when we went to Allensville for our first day, on the morning of recess in September, we went out for recess. So those of us from High Plains kind of were huddled in our little huddle, and the white students were kind of huddled in their little huddle looking at us because they were not used to interacting with us also. Then one little boy said, "Well, if you're Indian, prove it. Show it, to us that you're Indian." So my sister gathered all of us in the little group, and this was probably second and third grade outside for recess together. And so she said, whatever I do, you do. So she decided that she said that we were going to march around in a circle. And so she did her own little inner actment of the woo, 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 woo. And we were dancing in time to that, going around in our circle. Well, we hadn't been out there doing that long when it came a clap of thunder and a streak of lightning, and it started pouring down rain. So it scared us to death because we had never done a rain dance or whatever. And the kids were just scared almost that this had happened. So we had to all go running inside the school. After that, they never made a comment to us as a community of Indians before. They believed we were real. So I couldn't wait to get home to tell my mama. So we got off the school bus and had to walk down our long driveway. Mama would always meet us. She'd be out in the yard. When she saw us coming, I said, Mama, I have something to tell you. So I told her, the little boy said, prove it if we were Indian. So Sister, well, we called her Sissy. Sissy got us all together, and she told us what to do, and I told Mama. Well, my mama was furious. She said, number one, you don't mock the Lord. Nobody makes thunder and lightning and rain but the Lord. You don't ever do that again. And you don't ever try to prove who you are by making up something. So I actually got a whipping for telling, for being the tattletale, and for doing it. But anyway, that lesson stands out to me because we were raised in a very religious family. We believed in God, and that was one lesson that my mom really taught me, that you don't mock the Lord and that you be proud of who you are. You don't have to prove who you are to somebody asking you who you are. And I think that's been a real steadfast thing to me all of my life, that I have really been proud of my own identity and have, always felt that I am not any less than anybody else because of who I am, or it's just really been a lifetime lesson that I learned from that one little experience of being sent to the other school. And as time went on, I made lifelong friends in that second grade classroom. And we're friends until today. We went to school together, went on to high school together, stayed friends after college, and then some of them have, like me, have moved back here. So I made some very good friends there and had some very caring teachers there. But it was always among the group some that did not feel that we were equal to them, of the white race. And then, so that was one important lesson that I learned early. And it has really influenced me in a lot of things throughout my life.
It's a very, I think it's a very strong lesson that you obviously picked up at the time, and I think sharing it now, it's really informative, and I appreciate that. And that the piece you just gave us, I've got a few follow-up questions.
Okay.
First, what were your parents' names?
My dad was Ernest Stewart Sr., and everybody called him Page. Don't know the story behind that. That's just everybody called him Page. And then my mother was Dosha Ree Epps Stewart.
All right. And where did they go to school, by the way?
My dad went to High Plains, but he only went through the 10th grade. High Plains, when he was going through school, only went to the 10th grade, and then after that you had to go back to school at night for night classes to get the high school diploma. And my dad got a job and went to work, so he did not finish his diploma until he was working. He was almost 60 years old, working in a mill, and they offered classes that they could go back and take. They had to take a test, and then according to their test, it determined how many classes they had to take. Well, the only class that my dad had to take was writing, and that's because they said he didn't elaborate enough. He was a whiz at math. My dad could do mental math like you wouldn't believe. And he did heavy construction work, so he had to know angles of ditches and that kind of thing, so he could get on the equipment and do it. When they went back and measured, he was on the money. And then for doing mental math, figuring up things, it was amazing, his thought process. But he was very talented with math. But he went to work instead of finishing school. And then during the time when he was a supervisor at Collins and Aitman Textile Plant in Roxborough, is when he went back and took the test and then had to do the writing. And he says, I don't know why they want me to write a whole paragraph when I can say it in 2 sentences on his elaboration. My mom went through the 10th grade at High Plains, and then she had some relatives that lived in Clinton, North Carolina, where the East Carolina Indian School was. So she went down to live with some of the relatives in Clinton, well, some connections to relatives in Clinton. My uncle, Frank Epps, was the principal of a high school in Pembroke and Magnolia High School. And so with his contacts, and then other family contacts in Clinton, my mom went down there and stayed and went to school. And she did 11th and 12th grade in 1 year because she wanted to only be away from home for 1 year. Her parents were older. She was the youngest of 11 children. And so Uncle Frank, her oldest sibling, had been to college and come back and was a principal in Pembroke. And she was going to the 11th grade, so that age difference. So she lived down there, and she took classes the way they did it for her. On 1 week, she would do 11th grade classes Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and 12th, Tuesday, Thursday. Then the next week, she would switch and do 12th grade classes Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and they worked with her to do that. So she graduated valedictorian of that graduating class in Clinton at East Carolina High School. So then it was a test you could take if you wanted to be a public school teacher. So my mom took the test and passed it, so she could have been a teacher. But at that time, her mom was diabetic, had had a heart attack, and had some health issues. So she chose to come back home and be the caretaker of her mom and dad instead of going to Pembroke or back to Clinton to teach. So she was very intelligent. She worked with us, like I said, when we first started school, and my dad was the same way. My parents were very supportive toward education. So I was the first one in my dad's family to graduate from college, and in his immediate family. So they were very proud of me. My grandma only went through the 2nd grade. Her mom was a single mom, and so they had to work on this other guy's dairy farm. So when Grandma got old enough that she could help with the cows, she quit school in the 2nd grade. But she learned enough that she could read her Bible and her Sunday school lesson. She could, do her own bills. She could write, and so she taught herself a lot or my great grandma taught her, and doing a lot of things. My granddaddy on my dad's side went through the 5th grade, and then he quit in the 5th grade to start farming because he was needed on the farm. So he only went through the 5th grade. And then on my mom's side of the family, her mom went to school, I think, through the 6th grade. And then her dad never went to school. So he did not know how to read and write. And he had a certain mark that he made for his signature, but he could count money. But he could not read and write, well enough to understand to do that. But he raised all of his children so that they would finish school and go on with careers. And so I'm very proud of the fact that education was important to my family. And then when I went to Appalachian, my grandma was so proud. And I used to laugh at her because she would tell people that her granddaughter went to the USA college. She couldn't think of ASU, so she would get it mixed up. So sometimes now I laugh at her because I'll be trying to think of something and I may have the wrong name. And I said, I know now, Grandma was so proud, even though she didn't have it exactly right. She was proud of that fact.
It's all terrific. We'll get into education and all of that piece in a moment. I want to make sure I don't get too far away from your growing up, in the community here. So we talked a little bit about school. We're talking a little bit more about school, but like I said, I want to. What did you do for fun here growing up?
I played with my brothers and sister. We played things at home. I didn't know then that we were poor, but I guess now when you think back to it, we were limited in our financial resources, but we made do with what we had. For instance, we would take boards and empty tin cans, my sister and I, and build our homes. And we would, put our little boards up for our seats and make our table. And we'd have tobacco sticks that would measure off our rooms. And when you left one room and went to other, you had to slide that tobacco stick out. Well, my brother wouldn't follow our rules. And he had his little pinto horse, tobacco horse. And he had the string tied around for his little bridle, and he would paint his horses. They'd have different little paintings on them, and he would ride straight through and break our house all to pieces. He was the big bully with that. But we just made up things like that and played. And then my brother would be the wild guy, and he would take this string and tie us to the persimmon tree. And when the persimmons weren't right, he would take his little knife and slice them up and make us eat these raw persimmons. Have you ever had a raw persimmon with, it makes you feel like your mouth unfolds. But so he was into little foolishness stuff, like that. We never got hurt or anything, but he was always the outlaw that, had to do things with us. And then we had our younger ones. And then my brother operated on our dolls. He would cut their finger off and try to sew it back on, do surgeries with them. And he would catch the frog. There's that story about the little boy that actually put these pellets in a frog so he wouldn't win this contest. I remember reading a story about it at school. My brother actually did that, where he would pin the frog down and cut him open and put these little BB pellets in him, sew him back together, and that frog would get up and hop off. So we had science experiments with my brother all the time with doing things. So we did a lot of playing together. And then cousins would come over to visit. And then that means he would have a partner, then it would be, people our age. And but if another thing, when people came over where we had enough to play, we always had to play ball. My brother was a big ball player, and so we would always have to play ball. So we had a certain spot in the yard where we made our bases and we played ball, and I was never good. So my brother always had to take my last bat. I could swing twice, but then he would take my last bat because he had no feeling that I was going to do well with that, and he had to be on the winning team, so he would do that. And then he played ball all the way through with recreational ball. He didn't have a chance to play sports in high school because my dad had an accident and hurt his back and was out of work. And so my brother, they gave him study hall the last period of his 11th and 12th grade year, and he would leave and go to work at one of the mills and work second shift because my dad couldn't work.
Wow. So yeah, it sounds like you made your own fun. You did everything with your
Yes.
family. Your siblings, and then when the larger family would come in, you'd incorporate that sports, baseball. What sounded like it was big.
And it was big community-wise.
Go ahead.
On 4th of July, the whole community would get together and have the big ball games. We used to play up at the state line. There was a big field out there, and we'd get out in the field and have our ball game. And they'd make tubs of lemonade and sliced watermelon for our refreshments and drink. And the whole community would come, and we'd have these big community ball games. And on Sunday afternoon, we always visited. So if a whole bunch of us would visit my mom's older sister, and beside of her house was a big cow pasture. So we'd get out in the cow pasture, and it would be different families, 4 or 5 families that would come in together, and we'd get out there and play ball on Sunday afternoon and get together for activities like that. So our playmates, we played together. Then we went to church together, and we had our Sunday school, our regular worship service. We had our little youth choir where all of us sang in the youth choir, and then on Sunday night we came back for what was called training union, and that's where we had our lessons where they would give us parts to do. So they taught us to get up and do public speaking. We didn't know that then that's what they were doing, but they would assign us parts. And they said, now next Sunday night you're going to have this part. We had a little book, and we had our little parts that we'd get up and prepare for that training union. It was broke out into the adult group and then the youth groups by age on doing different things. And then on Wednesday night we had our Bible study and prayer meeting. So church was the big outline, and then you filled in your work during the week and whatever. And my brothers love to tell the story about going to Bible school. Now kids think once they get like 5th and 6th grade, they're too old for Bible school. But our brothers, when they were older, they loved going to Bible school because that meant they got that morning off from working in the field. They could go to Bible school and have the refreshments and play the games, with their friends. And then the driver's ed teacher would pick them up from Bible school, and they'd do their driver's ed and then bring them back in time to go to the field and work in the afternoons.
I like that, getting away from working in the fields. It's a good excuse. I like that. That's good. Did you spend time working in fields?
Yes.
All right.
I sure did. I helped in what we call hoeing the tobacco, where you go in and get the grass out, the weeds out, and then after the bloom came, we'd have to go in and top the tobacco and pull the suckers and put the sucker oil on. And every time we had to, sucker oil was in a little can then, and now they have spray that they just go through the whole field and spray. But we had to fill our little cans up with this sucker oil and go through and you'd have to get the suckers out and then put the oil strategically so that it would be enough that would run around the stalk all the way down. And my family always wanted to make sure you got your row every time. We had certain rows in the tobacco field, because then if you didn't pull the suckers good enough and put on enough oil, when you came back you had more work to do pulling those suckers out. So we knew the order that we worked on rows in the field. And we worked together with my uncle, my family and my uncle. So he had a lot more tobacco than we did by Daddy doing a public job. But we worked through all of his tobacco. And then if there was anybody that got sick or something happened and they needed more help, when we finished with ours, the different families of the community would go and do their fields of the tobacco. So you were busy in tobacco whether you're doing your own or not. And then when we would get home from school and my brother would take us over to the fields to work with my uncle, I would hand leaves. Then we were tying it, not mechanically. Later on we got the big stringer where you just had to put the leaves on the top and it went down and tied itself. But we handed leaves and tied the tobacco and had to lay it down, and then it had to be hoisted in the tobacco barn. So we would go and work in whatever needed to be done and which stage the tobacco was. We would go, and I started working actually handing leaves when I was in the 2nd grade. Before that, with my twin brothers, I was the one looking after them. So I would have to keep them contained and happy and play with them and out of the way of the field and all that. So I enjoyed going in handing leaves. And then when you finally got old enough that you could tie the tobacco, that was a big promotion that you got to do that. And then my brother and Dad would do the heisting, we call it heisting, hoisting the tobacco, putting it in the barn when we would get home from school. So sometimes we didn't even go home till dark. And then when you got home at dark, you had your chores to do, you had your homework to do, and then up the next day and on to school. And when my birthday is in July, and my older sister was really good in the kitchen. She loved cooking and whatever. And so it was about to be my birthday, and I was going to be 10, and I did not know how to make homemade biscuits. And she thought that was awful. So my mom let us go in the kitchen on a July 16th, no air conditioning, just the fans and all. And we were in there making different biscuits until I could get them so they looked right, so I could make that biscuit. So I was so excited. Little did I find out that would be my chore every day, to get up and make biscuits for breakfast, biscuits or hoe cakes or whatever. Every day, Saturday, Sunday, that was my job. We'd get up in the morning, and my job was to get those biscuits in the oven. And then my mom would put on whatever meat that we had raised. We had hogs, any meat that we had raised, and we had chickens, so we had our eggs. And so it was a treat to get some oatmeal or something that wasn't like that. But that was my job up until I went to college, that I was up every morning. I went to school some mornings with dough still under my fingernails where I had to make those biscuits and get them done. But when that last pan came out, I think I did like 3 different batches of biscuits. And then my dad was the judge, and he said, "These are perfect." So I could stop on July the 16th making biscuits for that. But we had a routine in the mornings where my brothers would, we had a wood stove in our kitchen, not the heater, not the stove itself. So they would have to get the wood in, And we had a cow that had to be milked. We had pigs that had to be fed. Their job was to get up and take care of all of that. My job was to get up and do the biscuits and the breakfast. And my sister's job was to make the beds and, get everything tidy, put clothes in to wash, whatever had to be done. That was her job. And then my mom put on lunch. So many a day we ate breakfast with cabbage cooking. And I can't stand to, even to today, I love cabbage, but don't like to smell it. But my mom would have whatever was for lunch would be cooking in the morning. Then when we came home from the fields, lunch was already ready. We just had to eat it up, heat it up, eat lunch, and we were back at the fields. And so she had a pretty much so schedule that we followed. And then we had a garden, so we had vegetables to pick and different things, to do with that. And my mom would can until under every bed was filled with cans of tomatoes and string beans. We didn't have enough storage space to put it, so what did she do? Put them in boxes under the beds. We made pickles and canned cherries and whatever, peaches, plum, preserves, whatever we had. She would do the preserves and the canning that we would go. So all of us had to help with the shelling of the peas. And, purple whole peas, is hard to get that purple off. And you didn't want us to go to school the next day and have purple fingers from shelling those purple whole peas. So we found that the bleach worked well. But so living on the farm, yes, we had chores to do, and we did that.
Yeah. It sounds very regimented, and with the biscuits, be careful what you wish for, it sounds like.
Yes.
But the other, it's a minor point, but I'm just fascinated that everything is regimented, everybody's got a thing. I'm wondering, was when you canned things and they went under your bed, did your bed have the peas and the peaches, and then your sister's bed, or was it just whatever came out?
Yeah, and it depended. Yeah. Some things my mom would can in smaller jars.
Okay.
So the bed that was the smallest to the floor would get those things, and then some she would can in taller jars, like the string beans and the tomatoes and stuff, because with a family of five children, and then the parents, she needed more string beans than we needed to have in the preserves or the pickles. So it depended on the height of your bed from the floor.
Fantastic. That's terrific. So, at this point in this stage of growing up, you mentioned earlier, about what they were doing was teaching you how to speak publicly, public speaking. But it wasn't a class on public speaking. It was something. So I'm interested. We talked about your parents, and they gave you this regimented way of living on the farm. How did they teach you to be an American Indian? How did they teach you to be part of the tribe? Was it direct, or was it like the informal approach?
Being a part of the tribe was the church. Because all of the tribe went to the same church. It was our cousins, our neighbors, the whole community. So that was the circle where we always, met up at the church. And then with the community activities like July the 4th, where we would, go play the ball, be up there all afternoon into night, till it got too dark to play ball. It was community activities. It was visiting, like going to my mom's sister's house on Sunday afternoon and playing. So we knew we were part of the tribe, that we were American Indian people, but all of our activities were intertwined. In the winter, the ladies might have a quilting, and, they all go to one house, and the quilt would be out, and they'd all sit and quilt, and help with doing the quilts. Or the corn shuckings when everybody would get together. That was before my time. I didn't much help with corn shuckings, but I've heard of, earlier days where they would go and do that. And then when anybody needed help doing something, we always just helped out. It was no monetary exchange, just they needed the help. We all just went and helped. But the church was kind of our center of life. And there we learned about our God. And there, they taught us to be on, our best behavior. Wherever we went, we were disciplined by, if I went to my friend's house after church to spend the afternoon till training union, they disciplined me just like my parents would have. They corrected you. They let you know what was right or wrong. You were the same expectations were wherever you went in the community with that. And when we went to first went into the white schools, that was the first time our interactions had been with anybody outside of the Indian people, because all of our interactions had been done right here within the community. So it was a very sheltered life. We didn't know it then, but we didn't go out, and intertwine ourselves with the other people of the community.
Yeah, that sounds very intentional. Oh, let's let that ring through.
Just take it off the hook.
Sounds like a good plan.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, it sounds like a very intentional idea to keep the community, as you said, you didn't realize it, but it was like insulated. It was together and not a lot of experience outside of the community. Why was that, do you think?
Our parents had experienced a lot of things that we as children never had to experience. When my dad was growing up, he would go to a store and not be served just down the road to Virgilina. They knew it were certain places that would not serve them as Indians. When my mom was growing up, and if her dad had to go into town, there were bathrooms for the black, there were bathrooms for the white. There were no bathrooms, that he can even go into when he was up there, when he went to sell tobacco or, do any exchanges. They faced that segregation and just that racism that, they knew that they couldn't go some places. And it was more of an openness of rejecting the American Indians at a lot of places. And they had faced a lot of that. So when we were growing up, we really didn't have that much interaction outside of the community. And then we didn't really face it until it started with our education system. And even when our Indian children went to some of the other schools, some of the older children expressed being teased a lot and called names and left out of groups, and stuff like that.
Now, that last point, is that your experience, or
no? I started in the second grade.
Oh, okay, but it was people in your generation.
Yes,
okay.
But
okay.
When I started in the second grade, the ones who started off having to go to 10th grade,
right.
And they experienced more face to face. I think at our age, at the second grade, it wasn't, even though they asked us to prove that we were Indian, that was kind of the extent that we felt there to begin with. But for the older children, they expressed that they went through a lot of things, like they might catch them in the bathroom and trip them up or kick them or not let them go to the toilets, or stuff like that they went through. So a lot of that had to be corrected and worked through. But I think from me on that age level, now there were still some instances where we were teased and called names and whatever, and even in newspaper stories and things where they referred to us as Cubans, or in doing some research with our Board of Education notes, I am participating in a grant that we have for the Sappony, and I'm going to, through the Board of Education meeting notes and looking at how they referred to us in their notes, and they put our number in the colored, it was a white number and a colored number of students in the schools in the county. So they had the white and the colored. They didn't count us, and we didn't have, they didn't even recognize our own school. And then they had districts numbered 1 to 25. So when they decided to include the High Plains School, they didn't put us what would have been logical, 26. They put us 0. And then, it's just how they looked at things. And when they had their meetings, and when we first started, where they recognized our High Plains Indian School, they would buy furniture or books for the libraries for the other groups. And then when that school got rid of theirs, they brought those to High Plains. We never got new textbooks or the new desk or library books. We got the ones that was discarded from the other schools. And so it's just things now as an adult. When I sit there and do that research, it's so important that we know that. But then from a personal standpoint, I have to really deal with my emotions, and I find myself questioning, a lot of the actions made. And when our families asked for inside bathrooms, and this was like in 1960, before the school closed, and they were saying they didn't have the funds. But yet, for the white high school, they were building an athletic field, and they were putting out bleachers, and they were doing the outdoor restrooms, for that school. And we didn't have the inside facilities at our school, and money being spent on things like that instead of the bare minimum that we may have asked for. And for anything that was done for our school, Virginia had to pay part of it. And it was whether it be they paid part of the tuition of the faculty, or whether they gave money for tuition to the Person County Board of Education for different things. But just in meeting what was the needs, the necessities, the materials, and the teachers that came to our schools to, it was a certain pay for the white school, a certain pay for the colored schools, and the teachers that came from our Indian schools, they were even dropped down a third level instead of giving, and they were teaching us just like each level was getting taught. But for the salaries, it was based on the color of your skin. So it's, I have to find myself doing a lot of forgiving Because as a human, to see that kind of differences being made. But personally, when I went through the schools, I felt like my teachers were for me. I never felt like they weren't teaching me, that I wasn't part of their students or whatever. So I didn't have that same feeling that a lot of the older children that made that transition felt from the whole school situation.
Yeah, that idea is well, it's fascinating, because I think the other thing is that when you start younger, presumably you'll be with your classmates for longer, and then you can become friends a little bit more,
Yes.
as opposed to coming in at the end and then having to for a year. So there's something to that is interesting, and it also makes sense that having experienced that, your parents and their generation would have turned inwards to people who appreciated them as opposed to outwards to people who didn't. So that makes sense too.
Now, my dad worked at a public job and worked for his boss were white, the company owners, and he was always well respected in his job, and he was good at what he could, what he did, and they appreciated him, and liked his work style, and he gave them 100%. And that's a lot of things that you hear with our people that went to work in the mills or the different factories here. They knew that when our people went to job, they were going to give them an honest 8 hours work. So that was like a reflection overall of our community, on the work ethics. And I think a lot of that stems back because of our raising with the church and knowing, being taught early what and how to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and work may be a thing to talk about in this for this little part here, but we talk about education and how, especially that Virginia and North Carolina both put in something for the school, because this tribe, your tribe, is it goes over the state line.
Yes.
Can you talk about other ways in which that's evident? That's sort of an interesting little, that the tribe was here obviously first, and then the state line came through. So how else, other than the school, was that apparent, or was it apparent?
Not really to us. We didn't really think of the state line because the sign was there on the road, but we all lived on both sides and traveling back and forth and whatever. And the main difference that it did make was for the school, because the Virginia did not provide for our American Indian children to go to school there. And so they had attended, even after they closed High Plains School, the Virginia students still attended North Carolina schools for 3 years afterwards, before Virginia started allowing them to attend the schools in Halifax County. So Halifax County was later on accepting that Indian education than that.
And remind me, did you live in Person or in Halifax?
Person.
Okay, so you lived on the North Carolina side.
Yes.
And how often would you go into Roxborough growing up?
As a child, we didn't go to town often. We may have gone on Saturday afternoons after we finished up with all of our farming stuff, and go in, to buy our general groceries that we didn't raise at home. We would go in to get those groceries, or when we went school shopping after my dad sold tobacco, then we would go into the store and go school shopping. But a lot of times we may stay with our grandma and granddaddy, and our parents would go and do our shopping. And come back. So it was a real treat when we got to go in, and we would go into the store and we could actually look and pick out, what clothes we wanted, because our parents had done that for us. We'd go to the shoe store, and our mom and dad would pick out what shoes we could have about, because the cost would matter, and then we would try on the ones and get to choose, but we just got those for school. Our wardrobe was our school clothes, our church clothes, and our play clothes, and the play clothes with the work clothes. So when we came home from church, we changed out of our church clothes, and then we put on, our play clothes or whatever. And then we had our school clothes that we had that, we didn't play in, that we just used, to go to school with. So they were very stringent and had to be on, buying our clothes and whatever. But when we would get to go to this hot dog restaurant, and it was Toot and Tell It. So we would stay out in the car, and we thought it was the neatest thing, because you drive up and you toot your horn, and a person came out, and he had on the little hat like we had seen on TV, the little hat they wear, and the little white apron and everything, and we'd make our order within reason. Well, we knew we were getting hot dogs, but we could choose what we wanted. But my mom always got hamburger because she was diabetic, so she didn't eat hot dogs. So she got the hamburger, but we all got the hot dogs because my brother could eat 6. And so we would, choose what we would want, and we would get to drink soda if we went to the hot dog restaurant. We had a choice of the grape crush or the orange crush drink in the bottle. So, things like that was really neat, because at home we drank milk because we had a cow. And, of course, my mom had, and dad had coffee, whatever. And then when we got older, we had tea and, other stuff. And then for our treats and tobacco, we always had, a pack of nabs and a drink. Or especially, it depended on the time of the season and what they could afford, but it was neat to be able to drink a soda and have a pack of nabs for your 10 o'clock snack in the tobacco field. But you may have been up since 5 because you had to and eat your breakfast and all that. Then you had to go move out the barn of tobacco that it finished curing and get that in the pack house. So when you pull tobacco today, you could put that green tobacco in the barn. So, but it was neat to get to on those Saturday afternoons. But we didn't go to town that often, and we didn't make that wise of choices. But we didn't have just a blanket selection. Our parents would choose what we could get, and then we could choose, out of that with them.
Now, you said a pack of what? Of nabs?
Yes.
I don't know what that is. I'm sorry.
The orange peanut butter crackers.
Ah,
yes.
Very good. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. I didn't know that's what they were called.
Yes.
Okay.
And then sometimes for lunch, instead of going home and eating our vegetables and whatever that we had cooked in the daytime, we would go to the store, Christie, that was located right down across the field here. And Dad might get us some beanie weenies or a can of sardines or, different little things that we could eat like that for our lunch instead of going home and eating the real food. So that was a treat to us.
That's really great. Yeah, no, that is neat, and I'm glad to learn the name of those the peanut. I didn't know the name of so I'm glad to learn that.
My brother was in the band, and they went to Florida for a competition. And when he got to go, because he was in the band, and that was the first time that he had actually been responsible for going in a restaurant and ordering his food and, reading the menu and seeing, what the choices were on the menu, because we didn't go out to eat, unless we went on that Saturday afternoon and got a hot dog. We didn't, as a family, when we were growing up, go to a restaurant, and sit down and order until later years. Now, my younger brothers had a lot more opportunities than we did because our family wasn't farming then. And they got to have, their own little job. And my brothers got to drive the bus, for the high school and different opportunities that they had, but they were 4 years younger than me. And so they had an opportunity, for doing things. But when I was growing up, we didn't just on a Friday night saying, let's get a bath and we're all going up to Bob's barbecue, and eat supper. We didn't do that.
Yeah, so I'll ask you something about that, but I wanted to make sure that when you did go into town, in these times that we were just discussing, did you ever feel any kind of discrimination there going into Roxborough, or was it always pretty?
We didn't go into
there?
all the stores. Okay. And now that I look back, it was that financial difference, as well as it probably was that difference in the acceptance difference too. But the stores that we went in, I never, my dad knew the people, and there was only one store that we would go into, and they had little ladies that put out the different merchandise. And I remember as a child, in elementary school, she would follow us around and watch us. And I wonder why she was just looking at us, like me and my brothers, when we would be walking and looking at toys and stuff while our parents were, picking out the stuff that they were buying for us. And she used to follow us around the whole time. And I remember questioning, why other students, I say students, I used to be a teacher, why other kids, were kind of free play of the store, but she was watching us. So that's probably the earliest feeling that I had of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, wow. Yeah. And so leading into that next point, which is, you mentioned your brother went to Florida with the band. That's his first experience. Your younger brothers, they had a different experience. Now, what about your first experience, either going to a movie theater or a restaurant or a store, all on your own, or with friends or something like that, but not with your parents, just as a person on your own, making your own decisions? What are the details on any? Do you remember any details on something like that?
When my older brother got his driver's license, we were permitted to ride with him to the bowling alley. There was a bowling alley in South Boston. So our choice of going somewhere was to ride with my brother to the bowling alley. And my dad didn't give my sister and I the money. My brother had the money. So he was in charge of when we got our popcorn or paying for our bowling, and he loved that, being the one in charge. But after my brother got his driver's license, the main thing we would do would be to go to South Boston to go bowling. And a movie theater, I may have gone some in high school with my cousin friends. We may have gone together to a movie. I remember going to the high school's theater productions when the theater would put on their different plays. I loved, going to them and participating with them. And then I was a part of the concert choir in high school. So we would travel to different places during our concerts. And I remember traveling, with them with the choir and doing things. But we didn't do a lot of spending money going to the movie theaters, and bowling was our thing, because we could go and bowl 5 games for $1. So with my brother and my 2 sisters, and then usually she took a friend and I would take a friend. And so, for $5 or $6, that was our treat for. And if you bowl 5 games, you got a free popcorn or, whatever. So, but we didn't do, it was more just going to homes and visiting and that kind of thing. But so when I went to college, I was very sheltered, and it just really helped by, as we were talking at lunch, on getting involved with that Baptist Student Union. And then I loved the music, so I was in their touring choir, so I had those practices, and then being in the choir at the First Baptist Church, and then the free Wednesday night meals they would give to the college students that came to their church, and doing things like that. So it helped me, because that was such a recollection of what I had grown up with things involved, with things like that. But I found that once I went to school that I was very sheltered, that, there was a lot of things I had no recollection of at all. So I was going to be a resident assistant. So we had to go the weekend early for the little workshops that they would do. So I was sitting beside my friend that was going to be my roommate, and we were sitting in the workshop, and they kept toting in these plants of things. I said, boy, they got a variety of tomato plants, because some would be shorter, some was a little taller. And I said, they don't exactly look like our tomato plants. And she just laughed. She said, are you being serious, Dorothy? I said, yeah. She said, those are marijuana plants. I had never seen one. That was the closest thing I'd seen to it was a tomato plant, but the leaves were so different. And I was wondering why they were bringing these tomato plants into our meeting. So, I was very sheltered. And there was a 0 tolerance policy for alcohol in my family. And so it was I didn't even know the names of stuff, that was prevalent with what people were drinking and all of that stuff. All of that, my first exposure came when I was in college. And then the worst thing was the streaking. When they said, it's a streak, I had no idea what a streak was. So I ran on down the hall to look out the window too, and I was like, what? So I was living and growing up here, I was very sheltered. So I learned a lot, not just in getting my degree in college, but, and my friends, they found it comical, not to the point they were making fun of me, but just, I was Jethro coming into Appalachian, where I just really wasn't a lot of the things outside world experiences that I just had not had.
Yeah, it sounds like you got a degree and an education.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's so that's perfect. Great segue, because I wanted to get back to education, and we'll talk about it now. So you went to App State.
Yes.
Okay. And what were I think you also mentioned that you were the first to graduate on
my dad's
side. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So was it always sort of expected that you would go to college, or was it not expected? Or how, you said your parents emphasized education, but how much did they emphasize education when it came to college?
I always wanted to go. I started off when I was little, when we would be doing our little playthings. My puppy, the cats, whoever I could find, I was teaching them. And I was having church with them, and then we'd go into teaching. And I would line them up on the porch, and they would be the congregation. And I would be the Sunday school superintendent and welcome them. I'd lead the choir and sing with my animals, and I'd do the preaching, and then we'd have school. And, and my animals learned to be pretty good congregations. But I started at an early age wanting to be that leadership in church, to be that teacher of wanting to teach things. Just being that teacher, I had always, from a little girl, had that desire that was my goal, and that's what I wanted to do. And my dad had expectations for my brothers in school, but not the same expectations he had for my sister and I. And she was very intelligent, and I made good grades, but I worked for them. And hers seemed to come more natural with her. And then I was 18 months younger than she, and we were very close all of our lives. And then she died unexpectedly at 16, and she was taken sick on a Saturday afternoon and died Sunday at lunchtime. And it was 2 weeks before we ever found out exactly what happened. And my dad went through a time of being very angry with the Lord, angry with the doctors, and something needed to be done. And that was just a very trying time in the life of my family. And my mom was diabetic, and so with all the upset, they had to put her in the hospital room beside of my sister, and my sister was dying, and my mama was sick in the other room, and my dad was mad, and I'd never seen my dad cry. That was a traumatic experience. And then after she died, I found out that I was living my life. Whatever she did, I knew in 2 years I could do. Like, a big thing was shaving your legs. So after she did hers, I know 2 years I could do mine. So just different things happened. I just followed along with her. And we shared a lot of things together. My dad wanted us to learn how to play piano for the church, and he couldn't afford to do lessons for both of us. So we shared a lesson. We did a half an hour. Split it up, and then we would practice together so we could learn to play the piano for the church. Just everything we did together. And then this, all of a sudden she's gone, was a big adjustment for me, where I had to be the one doing things first. And at 14, that was a big adjustment for me. And she was really good at sewing. And my mom loved to quilt. She was good at quilting. And she had entered this contest where she had made her own outfit. The little duster, the little coat, the dress, had entered it. She won in the competition, and it went on to the state, and she won. And this is while she was, before she turned 16. And then when she died, my mom buried her in that suit that she had made. So she was just very talented. And I wanted to be the best quilter, but I couldn't get my stitches exactly right. So I would be the one that would go fix supper while Mom and Teresa finished up the quilt or whatever. And then at home ec, we had moved to a different school, and the home ec department wasn't finished. So we had to finish a lot of our stuff at home. And my sister could come home and whip up just prettiest little aprons and stuff. But I could do the monogramming, I could do the embroidering and stuff like that. But we did everything together. So that was a big deal. And she was wanting to go to France. She loved French and had excelled in it. So she had wanted to go for a trip this summer that she died in April. And that was a big deal for my dad to say that she could go on this school trip overseas. But, and she was very intelligent. So it was her expectations to go to school. It was my expectations to be a teacher and go to school. My brothers, it was their expectations to graduate and get a job and get a car and, that kind of thing. And that was okay, for them, but it was like it was more expected of us. But it was okay because we were wanting to do it anyway, for going to school. So I was the first one to go to college from my dad's side of the family for that, and then the first one out of my family. But my dad, if I would come home and I had made 96 on a test, and he looked at it and he said, "Why didn't you know this one?" So he was always expecting me to be the best. And I wanted to be the best. It wasn't just because he was making me. That was my expectations in doing things. So.
Yeah, just for the record, what was your sister's name?
Teresa.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that. And the expectation for the best, your own expectation that you wanted to go to college, you wanted to be a teacher. Why App State?
They had the best teacher program. At that time, when I was looking at colleges and looking at what they had to offer for teachers, that was the best teacher program. And it also helped because I had never been to the mountains. And I'd always wanted to. And it seemed like I would love to have been in the mountains, but I had never been. So I got two dreams. And then my family didn't travel. And the first time that I went to the beach was the year I graduated from college.
What's the story there?
My dad did not know how to swim. He didn't care anything for the water. And at the farm, we had our ponds, and he would tell us if we got in the pond, it would kill us because we were going to drown if we got in the pond. He scared us from that. We had a branch that ran down along the perimeter of the pasture, and at one part, it would be shallow. So on hot summer days, my mom would go with us down, and we would wade on the rocks in that part of the branch. Notice I said my mom. My dad never went wading in the branch. And then on down from that, after a big rain, it had a big swimming hole-like place that would fill up after a heavy rain. So we were told, never do that. Well, my brothers did. And they would get punished. It wouldn't matter. Next big rain, they'd be down there and, playing in the water. None of them could swim, still playing in the water. My brother would go to friends' houses and they'd get in their ponds and, little mischievous stuff like that. But the water was not for my dad. And my uncle that I told you was the principal of Magnolia High School. My family and my mama's brother's family, we had matching children. Like there was one my age that he had, and my brother's age had matches with the twins. So we matched up cousin-wise. And so we would go to my uncle's house, and we had 5 children, and they had 3 children. And we would all go and stay in my Uncle Frank's house. No, he didn't have that many bedrooms, and pallets didn't matter to us. We slept on quilts, whatever, and we would go down and spend the night at his house, and then we'd take a day trip to White Lake. And that was amazing, for us that was like our beach trip as such. And my mom would even get in the water and whatever. My dad never got in the water, but that was our summer vacation as such, to go to my uncle's and then go to White Lake and play with the cousins in the water, but not my dad. So then after I graduated from college, I wanted a beach trip. So we got some cousins together and we went to the beach. So that was awesome.
Which beach?
To Wrightsville.
Okay, nice. Yeah. Still in North Carolina. I just noticed there's a back and forth in North Carolina, but still in North Carolina. Fantastic.
And I am not the world traveler. My existence, I did go into Tennessee when I was at Boone, at college. And I've been to South Carolina for family visits, whatever, in North Carolina and Virginia. My uncle lived in Richmond, but that's about my perimeter of travel. But
yeah, and so going off of the travel, back to the education. So you what degree did you end up getting?
A Bachelor of Science degree with teaching degree.
Okay. And what was, it sounded like going in, your idea was you wanted to be a teacher. Is that what you ended up doing?
Yes.
So tell me about your career.
Middle school education with a concentration in language arts and math. And I graduated from Appalachian on Sunday, Mother's Day. On Monday at 8 o'clock, the associate superintendent from Roxborough, from Person County, called me and offered me a job. And I had done my student teaching in Greensboro in Guilford County and loved it. And they offered me a job, but they could not give me the contract until after July the 1st. And that was, Guilford County didn't hire anybody, new teachers, until after July the 1st, going into the new year. So I had that offer, but then Dr. Rogers had called me at 8 o'clock on that Monday morning and offered me the job. And he said, if you can come in today at 10, we can sign your contract. So the Greensboro was attractive. I lived in Jamestown doing my student teaching and loved that Jamestown, Guilford area, and really thought, that could be good. But in the back of my mind, coming home and being of service back here to where I had grown up, I wanted to come back, and I wanted to work in my church and work with the youth and work with the music and being here in my own county and, just things. So I went to Roxborough and signed my contract. And on July the 5th, I got a call from Guilford County to come sign my contract. So I took the bird in the hand. Mm-hmm. And I taught at Earl Bratcher Elementary School, 5th and 6th grade, for 10 years. And then I went to the middle school. They needed a math teacher, and I had that middle grades math education. Our junior high was getting ready to turn into a middle school, so they offered me to move from the elementary school into, I was at junior high for 1 year during that transition, and then we were middle school the next year, and I stayed there for 25 years at the same school and taught there. Then after I retired, they needed a math tutor for math at the high school. So I did tutoring at the high school. It was to be part-time, but if they needed me more than the hours that I had to be there, I would do that too, until COVID came. And then I've just this past school year, I filled in 12 weeks for a teacher that was on interim. Well, she was on leave, maternity leave. And so I filled in the sixth grade math classroom for 12 weeks. So that teacher is still in me.
That's evident. That's evident. I forgot to ask you though, while you were at App State, you mentioned the Baptist student group and how that was something very important to you. Was there any sort of American Indian student group?
No. The only other American Indian that I knew that was at Appalachian was the executive director of the commission, Greg Richardson. His sister, Mashila, was there. And I met her while I was there, at Appalachian.
All right.
So she was the only other Native American that I personally met. We didn't have any other Native Americans in the Baptist Student Union. We had some more from Roxborough, from Person County that I knew, but I was not aware of any other American Indian students that was there.
Okay.
And then Mashila had actually told me about their Title VI Indian Education Program. That's a grant program that's sponsored through the Federal Education Department. And she had told me about these neat things that they had done in their program. So that when I came back to Person County and started teaching, I looked into that and helped us get that started in Person County for having that Indian education grant for there. And through, it had to be an Indian teacher and a minimum of 10 Indian students to start it. So I went to the Board of Education and asked that we incorporate, do the grant and incorporate that program. And through that program, one thing that I did that I wish I had been exposed to was a lot of Indian things. Through that grant, we went to Strike at the Wind to see that play, and we toured then Pembroke College, and we went to the coast to see the outdoor drama there, the Lost Colony. We went to Cherokee to see the outdoor drama there, Unto These Hills. And we went to see Chimney Rock, things that you read about but you don't get to see. And so we went to Jamestown. So our education part there, a lot of it was just our kids actually getting to go and see and experience some of these other programs. And that was just so enlightening to me, to give these opportunities that I would have liked to have had as a student in the public school system that's related to American Indian culture. Not so much just the Sappony, but things. And then taking them to Monticello to see where Thomas Jefferson lived. And we went to the Cherokee Reservation, and just for these students to get to visit and see Indian culture was just so enlightening to me. So I stayed the Title VI director as long as I taught. And then my niece started teaching at the school that I had taught at. And so when I retired, she was voluntold about the Title VI Indian Education Program. And she didn't have to be told a lot because she had been through the program. And she has that same heart that I have. She's a teacher. She has the same heart for sharing Indian culture with our students. So she started being the director of that program. And we don't have enough money in our program because it's based on how many people that are in the program. And so we always, me and Crystal still is, that's a volunteer job where, we don't get paid for anything that we do with the Title VI program. But that program means enough to us to do that.
Yeah, and it sounds like, I mean, I had questions on the Title VI program, so we're just get into it right now, which is great. But it sounds like it was almost a chance occurrence that you heard about it. Is that, am I mischaracterizing that you ran into?
I had never heard of it. Now, I don't know if I would have during my teaching career or, but.
And when did you hear about it exactly? Do you remember the year or where you were or anything like that?
I was a sophomore at Appalachian.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So I started reading up on it then. Mm-hmm. And I knew what it took to have it. So when I came back and started teaching, that's when I, went there. But I knew the superintendent and the associate superintendent personally from being in the Person County schools and different things. And so coming back to Person County to teach was like coming back being a part of the family. And my education family has always been highly respectable of my Indianness.
Yeah, and so you did give a summary, but I was wondering if you had just sort of maybe a sentence or two exactly what is the Title VI program?
The Title VI program is an opportunity to educate American Indian children on their culture. And in educating them on their culture, sometimes because of our culture as a result of our culture, some of our students do not do as well. And that may be because of their environment. It may be because they have special needs, that they have to have. And then keeping part of that culture, their education of educating themselves in not only cultural things, but books things too, and, offering that. Our Indian students, we've been blessed in Person County educationally. Our dropout rate, I think I can probably only think of 3 students from our community that ever dropped out of school. And they went back and got their GEDs afterwards. And so the dropout rate is not high here. Our parents have supported education enough that our students normally test well. They do well in the classroom. They're not struggling educationally. So they didn't need that tutor to come in to teach reading or reinforce math skills. But we were behind on our culturalness of our Indian identity. And so that was the standpoint that our grant for our Person County was, to help educate them culturally.
That's another great segue for me because, the community here, it's called the Sappony tribe now, but it has other names. Mm-hmm. It has had other names, and it people still know, of course. High Plains Indian is another mm-hmm. big one, right? That was the high school,
right?
Can you tell me about the transition between these names?
Well, and going back through the education records, the board minutes, we've been called Free Issues. We've been called Mulattoes. We have been called Mongolians. We have been called Cubans. So the Indian identity has not been a true recollection at all of us and our culture. And in newspaper articles and different things up through the years, we've been referred to as different names. Some being that we came from the Lost Colony as the Croatans. some that we were Cubans, and how I'm not sure of how they connected the word Cuban with us, but that was something that's been called. But what they should have been calling us as was Indians of Person County, which we are Indians, and that was our geographical location. So to me, that's the real name that should have come into it at the beginning, with the High Plains Indians community. That's correctly referring to us. And then that's why we felt the need to do some historical research and find our Sappony ancestry. And then we went to the legislature and presented to them. We were proud of being Indians of Person County, but that we are Sappony descendants, and that we wanted to be recognized from our historical cultural name. And so therefore it was changed in the legislature to the Sappony.
Which legislature?
The General Assembly
Of North Carolina.
of North Carolina.
Okay.
Because they had us down for Indians of Person County through the list of the participants in the North Carolina Commission of Indian Affairs. And we wanted to correctly change those legally to be the Sappony, and with the Sappony for the Commission of Indian Affairs. Now, we had been recognized in 1911 legislation. So when the commission was formed, we were not actually approached as a community. Are you ready to recognize yourselves, with the identity and join the Indian Commission? There was one member from the Indian Commission approached one of our senior members and asked about, we joining the High Plains, joining or Indians of Person County, the commission, and he said no, he didn't think we were interested. So they took his answer back to the commission. We, as a total community, were never really approached to become a member of the commission. And then later, when we became organized and we had that desire to become a part and to be one of the recognized tribes, state recognized tribes, that's when we went through the General Assembly to change the general statutes. And we had been mentioned as the Indians of Person County since 1911. So there was a procedure that you could go through, the recognition procedure with the commission, in which I am on the commission. I highly honor and appreciate that process. But the fact that we were already recognized in 1911, we did not have a need to do the historical document to certify that we are American Indians. So that's why we went through the legislative approach and got a seat on the commission.
And when do you happen to remember when that first approaching was, where the one person spoke for the community? Round about what time?
Probably early 60s, late 60s, when they were first talking about organizing with the commission. And then we had a member, Lena Brooker, who is my first cousin. My Uncle Frank, that was the principal in Pembroke, his daughter, had talked with us as cousins about how that would really, help solidify, unify, and all of that. But it wasn't until we as a community actually started looking at becoming organized, because, there for a while we didn't really see the need. But then you see that even for educational purposes, for our children, our students to be able to apply for American Indian scholarships, they couldn't do that just because they were from the High Plains. It's like you have to be from a recognized community. And although we were recognized in 1911, we weren't in that body of the commission. So that's just one thing. And then with housing needs and housing opportunities that our people could participate in, and just that identity issue of who we are. Don't keep supposing from where we came and who we are. This is our documented research, and we want to be recognized for our identity.
When did then you get involved in the Sappony get involved in the commission?
Right after we did the legislative approach on changing our name, and then we did the legislative approach for recognition. To become a part of to become a state recognized tribes, there is a legal process you have to follow. So we went to the legislature because we had that recognition in 1911 and became a part of the commission there, and then having a seat on the commission.
And you don't remember round about what time that was?
I hate to guess on dates.
Okay,
but
no, don't worry about
I
it.
was right there with the governor and watched him sign that, and was so proud of that moment.
Sure.
I spoke to the legislators, the different committees, and explained about who we were, and I was so proud to do that. And it's just a very historical turning point in which it didn't change who we were. We were our Indian people before all of that, but it just that it had to become a part of the process to get that down. And I want to say it was in the 80s, but yeah.
Yeah, that.
And I meant to bring a cheat sheet of my dates so I could have all of them.
Well, no, that's okay, because that's the story about you being next to the governor is more important in this setting, because we can look that up. That's a matter of record. But what I'd be interested in is that's the North Carolina side. Mm-hmm. This, as we've discussed several times, is a Virginia tribe as well. What's the story on that side?
We have actually been to the Virginia, like we have the North Carolina Commission. We have been to the meetings of the Virginia Commission of Indians, and we have written correspondence. We have been to their meetings, and then in the change of governors, their purpose for the Virginia Commission got changed, and they took the approach of the tribes that were already recognized in Virginia, binding together and doing the legislative approach for their federal recognition, and we were not included in any of that, even though we did go to the Virginia Commission, and we did present our history, and it was never accepted.
So it's not a state of Virginia recognized tribe? Is that what you're saying?
We are not.
Right, so that's what
yes,
I'm asking. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. We are recognized in Virginia because from different things that happen. Why else would they send money to North Carolina for their Indian students to attend if they didn't recognize that we were Indian? I mean, that's just one thing. And continued to do so even after High Plains School was closed. for 4 years afterwards, before they opened up their schools to let the American Indian students come to Virginia to go to school. So, is that recognition? Sure, it is.
Yeah.
And then even before then, with our history and different things that's been documented with our history and our geographical directions that we have had in the state of Virginia, with Fort Christiana and other dealings that we have had with them. But
how about federal recognition? How has that process gone?
We have not had the resources. We would love to be a part of that recognition, and I hate that that's the way our system's set up, but it's real, and that's what all of us in North Carolina, with the majority with our tribes, is facing, is that we know our identity. So why we have to jump such hoops and spend such money to get to that point it's sad, but that's what the process is. So we would love to have our federal recognition, but we are proud of our state recognition, and we are in the process with one of our grants that we have on researching our history, and we're hoping that we're going to document enough of our history that we would be able to meet their qualifications. But then you have to have those financial resources, and it's not a common man's work the way that they have everything set up. So we would like to do that, not because we feel that's going to make us any more Indian than we are now, but there are a lot of opportunities that are extended to the tribes who have that recognition, and we feel that our people should have that same opportunities that other tribes have.
Yeah, that's terrific. Between the education and the Title VI, and then this discussion we've just had about recognition, there's a definite passion that you have, and I'm wondering, where did you sort of develop your passion for American Indian advocacy?
I think right here within this community, that, I've been always taught that I was an American Indian. And then, as my mom said after that little dance in the first grade, you don't have to prove yourself. You are an American Indian. Be proud of who you are and stand up for who you are. You don't have to do gimmicks to prove who you are. And I think having that as a part of my family, having that as a part of this community, and it's just in my soul, that I think that that's just contributed to it all, because even when I was at Appalachian sitting in that room of funny tomato plants, and I did not mind saying, when they want to know, do we have any American Indians, I raised my hand with pride. So I just have that proud, I'm just proud of who I am.
That's good. Yeah. And, in that vein, who are some of your mentors in this respect?
Oh, I'd be here naming for a while. My mom and dad, my grandma with the second grade education, that was so proud of every step that I made, that, when they asked for announcements at church, she told them about what was going on with me at college or in my Indian work, or just that proud, where proudness of it all, the support of the people here in my community, others that feel the way that I do, that we work together on projects. And Chief and I have been together. He's been Dr. Lindy Martin was our chief, but he was long distance, and he lived in another state. And then when we elected our chief to come right here from Halifax and Person counties, Chief Otis has been our chief. And I've been the only chairperson in our Sappony tribe. And so Lindy kind of appointed us to start with and got us together talking about the need that we needed to become organized and stand as a group. That's what we were going to need to do. And we picked out some community leaders, here that felt the same way that we did. Our first original council, everybody on there was just my mentor, my friend, had the same goal that I had. And then in the past, it's an elected process for this chief and chairperson. So I think it speaks that our people see the spark that Otis and I have. And we have a great working partnership that we do together. There's some things that's his forte that he can lead the trail for. There are some things that's more my forte that I can lead the trail for. So we've been a good working partnership. And then the council through the years has just been on fire for the High Plains Indians, our officers, and have just been on fire for our community. And then just our general population, the support that we have here. We're very unique. So I couldn't just list a few mentors. I would really be going down the list. And then with going to things at the commission, I attended the unity conferences and getting to know the leadership there and the leadership of the other tribes. And I served on the United Tribes for years on just across the state. I've just felt like that we've worked hand in hand and heart to heart on so many things that it's just been a great experience, and I'm just humbled that I've had an opportunity to do this. And then there's my grandchildren that know, my oldest grandchild is proud to say my grandma is the chairperson of the Sappony. And he has his sandy blonde hair and his kind of blue eyes and his paler complexion. And his daddy is Lumbee. His mama is my daughter, Sappony. But he stands proud, and he was just given an honor. The Atlanta Braves team had invitations open for American Indian baseball players in high school to do this application process, and they had to send a film showing their abilities as a baseball player. And he applied and was one of the 45 out of Canada and the United States that got selected for that camp. And he said, Nana, it just meant so much to stand there and hold that Sappony flag. So I've had lots of encouragement and things that have happened that have really encouraged me for my people.
Yeah, that's terrific. I wanted to, you said you'd be a list too long, but I did want to make sure that I got your grandmother's name on the
Hilda
record.
Stewart.
All right. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Hilda and Gaither Stewart were my dad's parents, and Zan and Mary Epps were my mother's parents, and they instilled that proudness in my mom and dad. So it carries on down through the generation.
Yeah. Well, so I have a few questions. I'm gonna see if Curry has any questions he wants to ask you. But before we get to that, two questions that I'm gonna ask everybody, and they're related. The first question is, what do you think is the most pressing need for the Indian community, the American Indian community in general?
The most, I can name you several. For the broader Indian community, is somehow we've got to establish that identity so that we're not always having to justify who we are. We need to gain that sense of identity among ourselves in North Carolina and in the whole nation. We need, I know there are a lot of feelings that state recognized tribes aren't real Indians, just the federally recognized. And that's a big hurdle that needs to be erased. That, we're all American Indian people, and that we shouldn't have to do that fighting for our identity. Then once we have that identity, we can move forward on having the resources to meet the needs of our people. And not just the needs, but have the resources to develop our population. In the people, our students of today need to have that identity and need to have the resources so they can move forward and be the best that they can be and be what they want to be. That there's no ceiling because you are a state recognized Indian.
Yeah, well put. And then the thing that's tied to that is what do you think the most pressing need is for this community, for the Sappony community, specifically?
Continuing financial resources. And I think with that, if we had the continuing financial resources, we've eaten many hot dogs, we've sold many quarts of stew, we've had willing members from out of town to send donations, we have had different activities that we have been blessed to be able to have what we have. And but it's been a chore. So if we need some kind of economic opportunity that would be a continuing means of financial resources, and if the resources that a lot of the federally recognized tribes have that we don't, and that we could be able to provide better housing for our elders and health care or things for them, more opportunities to help promote our youth, and then just more things like technology. We have a hard time keeping our phones working with our internet, and we've been looking for getting connection for Wi-Fi and internet and different things that we've got to have to be able to manipulate resources and work within the things that we need to have. Just a lot of the basic things with technology that we have. But yeah, I would just like to see us be somehow self-supportive to move forward with all of these goals.
Yeah, terrific. Well, Curry, I'm going to see. You have anything you'd like to add to it? All right.
Hello, Miss Dorothy.
Hi.
I have a couple of questions here, or more than a couple. I know you said you went to Appalachian State. Was Pembroke State ever a consideration?
Not really, because I wanted to go where I would get the best for my major. And then I may have applied and been accepted there just because it was a predominantly, what I felt like was a predominantly Indian school. But I also wanted to go where I felt like I would be getting the best education for my major. So I didn't really have a tie to there. And then when it came to the financial packet, and I was offered a scholarship to go to Appalachian, where my parents didn't have to pay for any of my tuition and room and boarding and all of that. They just gave me what little spending money, that I had to have. And so that was the big enticement, because my parents could not have afforded to pay for me to go to school. So I had worked hard enough in in high school, that I was able to apply and receive the scholarship to go there, so that my parents did not have to pay for me to go to school. And that was a big thing, because I knew if I had to depend on it, their financial resources were not going to be enough for to send me to school.
I know you said you've done some research of the Sappony Indians in your local Board of Education minutes.
Yes.
I know a lot of people depend on the census for a lot of the research information. I know you've mentioned some of the terminology for Sappony people locally. Is that the same for the census records?
Yes, it is. It's the same for the census records. And we have a team that's researching, like I'm researching the educational part with the Board of Education minutes. We have people on our team that are searching the census list, the tax list, and the genealogy connections on going back as far as we can go with our families. And we're finding that same thing.
I know East Carolina Indian School was a predominant place where kids were getting educated in the early 40s. I understand you had a relative who attended school there?
My mom. Yeah, that's what I was talking about. She took the 11th and 12th grade in 1 year and graduated as valedictorian of her class at the East Carolina Indian School.
Wow.
So she valued her education. And then there was a test that you could take to be a substitute, and she passed that. But her mom had major health issues, so she came back to look after her mom and dad instead of pursuing her teaching career as such. Yes.
And then I see the sign on the wall from the Sappony Youth Camp. What value does the Sappony Heritage Youth Camp have for your community?
Great value. We look forward to that every year, and we give credit to Julia Phipps, who served as our secretary for years. She served on the Commission of Indian Affairs. She served on the Indian Health Board, who was a major Indian supporter all of her life. And she had a dream that we would have a camp to bring back our Indian students so that they could come back to the community. People in the community go, as well as people outside of the community. And for the Sappony Youth Camp, you have to be a member of the Sappony tribe, and you have to be in rising 4th through rising 9th grade to be able to attend the camp. And they come for a week and stay at the cabins at Mayo. We have a great relationship with our Person County Recs Department, and they have cabins that's right on Mayo Lake. That's, I don't know which way you came in, but Mayo Lake is like 3 miles from here. And they have cabins that are air conditioned. They have the bathhouse with the showers and bathroom facilities. They're located on the banks of the lake. And then our program is what makes it so special. We have our own Indian students, like college students, people who have been through camp, our young adults that come back and run the camp. And as they come in on Father's Day, the afternoon, and stay until Friday of that week. And we have our counselors in training, which are our older students that are too old to come to camp now. They do counselors in training. They come back as counselors. They have or sign their little cabin of students or individual groups, and they stay with those people during the week. Our young adult leaders help with the program and the supervision of it all. And we include in that program, we teach them the history of their Sappony tribe so that they get it. Now, you know, in a week you can't go through all of it, but we can give them enough that they leave here being proud and knowing who their Sappony is. We like to take their genealogy and go back to their great-grandparents. We like to take them to the old cemetery and let them go and find the graves of their great-grandparents. And a lot of these students may not have been raised right here in High Plains. So it's very significant to them when they come back and they're here and see our practically Sappony church. Right now, we have all races in our church, but it's still predominantly the American Indian church. They get to see the sign where the school was. They get to go down to the old cemetery where there's graves in 1720s, and they get to see our tribal center and just learn that history that's so important to them. And then they have different crafts that they do. This past year, they were doing quilting, so they get a chance to quilt and actually see pictures of quilts, that's been done within the community and experience that. They do a lot of team building skills while they're here. We talk about the important landmarks. They get to go to Bible school at Calvary Baptist Church during that week. And it's just a very fun-filled, information-filled week where those kids get to come back. And they leave with so much pride in their Indian identity and being a Sappony and just have been on High Plains grounds. It's just, we think, a most significant part of our youth to be able to come back and share in that Sappony camp.
Well, thank you.
All right, thank you. I think the last question I have for you is what are you most proud of?
I'm a mama and a grandma, so personally or in my work with the Indian stuff, I am very proud of my family. And my mom and dad were so supportive of me when I have been so involved and busy with tribal work, in which I always had a babysitter, whether it was council meeting, I needed to go to a meeting or anything, my parents were always there for that support so that I could do a lot of the things. And then in growing up, my children have always been supportive, and they've been involved in things. And so it's good to work alongside them in doing my Indian work. So I'm proud of that. I'm proud of the opportunities that's been extended to my grandchildren. And then I'm just proud of the identity that we as Sappony have now. And if, having that identity and holding on to it allows us to reach for things to better us as a tribe, as individuals. And I'm just proud of our church that instilled my dependence on God, and just the blessings that I get as an individual from Him, and then share as a whole community. I'm proud of that tie-in with them, and just our Sappony Indian people. I'm just proud of them that we work together and we have come as far as we have, and that people like our executive director, Dante Desiderio, has never lived here on the grounds of High Plains, but he has worked so diligently for us, he and his sister, because they're of Sappony ancestry. He's my distant cousin. And even though he's not here on the grounds, he has that strive, and not just for us as a Sappony, but he looks out for opportunities for all of us as North Carolina Indian tribes. And he's just been working for all of us. So I'm just so proud of that cohesiveness and that identity. And I think if we keep that we'll find a way to keep going on. My motto is God will find a way when there is no way. And that's happened so much in my personal life and in my life as an American Indian.
Well, that sounds like a terrific place to end. And so I'm at the end of my questions, but I want to make sure while we have this record open, do you have anything you'd like us to know? Anything you'd like to add?
There's lots I could talk about. We could have a whole volume set with volumes 1 through 21. But I think we've hit the major points. But, I don't want this to be the stopping point. I want us to have much more to share and to report on. And I don't ever want us to lose sight of what our elders did in the past, of the conflicts they went through, the hard work they had to do, the work they had to do to stay cohesive here in High Plains. And they did it. They made it work. And it's been passed down to us. So I'm proud of what our forefathers did. I'm proud of the raisings that we had here in this community. And I just look forward to the future of the opportunities that we can have. And through it all is keep that sense of Indian identity.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you sitting down with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.